Okay, sir. So the live has started. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sharonna from Team Voyages into the Past, Otit Prabaho, and I welcome you to another of our live sessions. Today, we are very happy to have with us Professor Raziuddin Akil, and he will be talking on a very interesting topic. Raziuddin Akil, sir, is a professor of history at the University of Delhi. He has published widely on religious traditions, literary practices, and political culture in medieval and early modern India. He has authored several books, including Sufism, Culture and Politics, Afghans and Islam in Medieval North India from Oxford University Press, The Muslim Question, Understanding Islam and Indian History from Penguin Random House, and Days in the Life of a Sufi, 101 Enchanting Stories of Wisdom from Pan Macmillan. Professor Akil has also edited a book with Partho Chatterjee called History in the Vernacular, and another one with David Curley called Literary and Religious Practices in Medieval and Early Modern India. Again, with Tilottama Mukherjee, Raziuddin sir has edited An Earthly Paradise, Trade, Politics and Culture in Early Modern Bengal. Today, Professor Akil will be talking about the historical value of some of the many enchanting stories of miracles in medieval Indian Sufi literature. So, without any further delay, I would like to pass the session on to Raziuddin sir. We are very excited to hear from you, sir. Welcome.
Thank you, Sharanya, and your group for doing this excellent work of bringing together speakers, working on different themes in Indian history, and making this scholarship, research available to a larger public for its dissemination. And therefore, I'm grateful that you have invited me also to be a part of this fine work that you are doing. So my lecture today aims to explain the context and content of Sufi miracles, Karamat, singular Karamat, and therefore Karamat Aulia, stories of miracles in medieval Sufi literature, as announced. In doing so, I will recount some of the stories in original, in Persian text, especially Fawaidul Fuad of Nizamuddin Aulia, which is a collection of his discourses. So some of the material will be derived from there, and in doing so, I will also try to provide some meanings to them through my interpretations of such anecdotes in Sufi literature generally, but also specifically with those examples that I will be giving. These stories have touched the hearts of Ahle Dil, as it were, in the past, and have continued to evoke some hope for mercy and grace in our distressful times as well. Medieval Indian Sufis have generally been portrayed as torchbearers of Hindu-Muslim unity, cultural integration, religious tolerance, and even secularism. Some scholars tend to project the Sufis as deliberately working for the spread of Islam in India, while others criticize them for adopting a passive, otherworldly attitude with no interest in the affairs of this world. These are the two broad kind of extreme positions in terms of understanding about Sufism, which is somewhat flawed in both cases. The diverse views on Sufis and Sufism obviously indicate the diverse questions and approaches with which the historians have studied the subject. And there's a long history of the study of Sufism in India in the last 100 years now. Here we will refer to some fascinating stories and anecdotes, including tales of miracles, which reveal the vibrant nature of Sufism as a spiritual movement within Islam in medieval Indian environment, especially in the period of the Delhi Sultanate, from which my examples will be mostly coming from here for the purpose of this presentation. These anecdotes feature in large numbers in Sufi literature in a wide variety of genres in many languages. But here I will be introducing to you mostly the material from the Delhi Sultanate in Persian. These include Malfuzat or discourses of Sufis, especially the very famous Fawaidul Fuad, to which I will come back frequently. And also tazkiras, biographies or hagiographies of Sufis, mostly written after the death of the Sufis, and compiled in the medieval period itself, though. These include, as I said, the conversations of Nizamuddin Aulia collected by Amir Hassan Sizzi in the famous text called the Fawaidul Fuad. I have a text here which is published by Urdu Academy. It's called Fawaidul Fuad of Malfuzat of Nizamuddin Aulia, edited by, compiled by Khaja, Amir Hassan Sizzi, and it has been published with a parallel Urdu translation by Khaja Hassan Sani Nizami. Some examples from which I'll be giving to you subsequently. Fawaid al-Fuad means benefits to the heart. Fawaid and Fuad, moral stories benefiting the heart. As also discourses of Nasiruddin Chiragh Dehli, who was a successor in the Chishti Silsila of Nizamuddin Aulia in the second quarter of the 14th century. His discourses were put together by a disciple called Hamid Qalandar. So he was not a Sufi, he was more of a Qalandar. To the extent that he would be also told that either you become a Sufi or a Qalandar. Qalandars would be often deviant, Sufis would be more conformist to the mainstream Sunni Islam, but broad, influences accepted. So there is a collection of discourses of Nasiruddin Chiragh Dehli also. It's called Khairul Majalis, the best of the assemblies. Khair and Majlises. So best of the assemblies. Famous biographical dictionaries of Sufis, hagiographies, including Qiwamul Aqaid of Muhammad Jamal Qiwam. This is an important text. This was written within 25 years of the death of Nizamuddin Aulia, 1325, and this is 1350. This text has been written in Deccan, Qiwamul Aqaid, named after the author, Muhammad Jamal Qiwam. Is the faith, faith and beliefs of Qiwamul Aqaid, and faith and beliefs in the powers, miraculous powers of Nizamuddin Aulia are recounted here in this text. Also, the very famous Siyarul Aulia of Amir Khurd Kirmani, once again from the middle of the 14th century. Siyarul Aulia, biography of the friends and of God. Aulia, Wali is a friend. Aulia, Allah, friends of God. Siyarul Aulia of Amir Khurd Kirmani. And also from the late 15th, early 16th century, there is a text called Siyarul Arifin by Sheikh Jamali Kambo Sohrawardi. So it is a Sohrawardi text, but this is a very interesting text, dedicated to Humayun. But this person was very closely associated with Sultan Sikandar Lodi previously, before the coming of the Mughals. Siyarul Arifin, once again, is a biography of the seekers, of truth, of God. And more significantly, a famous text called Akhbarul Akhyar of Sheikh Abdul Haq Muhaddis Dehlavi, who was a fine scholar of traditions of the Prophet. He had studied in the twin city of Makkah and Medina, came back to Delhi, and was a scholar of Hadith, traditions of the Prophet, but also wrote this fine book on the biographies of Sufis in India from the earliest time, basically from the time of the Delhi Sultanate, early Delhi Sultanate, Muinuddin Chishti and all, to his time, but because he was a Qadri Sufi, so there will be some Qadri content also in this. Together, they narrate some very interesting anecdotes from the lives of a large number of Sufis, which are important for us to understand the religious milieu, culture, of Islam in this period as it evolved. There are different phases where middle of the 14th century becomes very, very important, because Nizamuddin Aulia was very, very active in the late 13th, but especially in the first quarter of the 14th century. So different movements and different times when Sufis become very, very important. Muinuddin Chishti is an early 13th century person, but by middle of the 14th century, people are going for ziyarat of the dargah of Muinuddin Chishti from Bengal, from Delhi, Deccan. The kind of ziyarat that is known to us today has already started in the middle of the 14th century to Ajmer. So these texts actually confirm that Sufis are already very, very important in terms of the production of their own literature, but also practices at the Sufi shrines, and attractions of large numbers of people to the Sufi shrines are reported too in these texts, as also in the political texts. Not merely these discourses and hagiographies, but also in political texts like Tarikh-e-Firuz Shahi of Ziauddin Bagni has information about massive influence in Delhi of the presence of Nizamuddin Auliya in the time of Alauddin Khalji, and therefore Tarikh-e-Firuz Shahi of Ziauddin Bagni is very, very important. And Bagni eventually, goes on to be a big historian, writer, etc., sitting and working at the Nizamuddin Dargah only subsequently when he was removed from the court of Firuz Shah Tughlaq. And before that, we know that he was a personal advisor to, a boon companion advisor to Sultan Muhammad Tughlaq for 17 years. Muhammad Tughlaq is said to be a mad person, but there are debates about, about how evil he could get. But the fact that he had people like Barney as advisor means that we need to qualify that. Also, there is another important text which refers to the Sufi activities not only in North India but also in the Deccan. A text called Futuh Salatin by Izzuddin Isami. Futuh Salatin, Futuh, conquest, and Salatin, conquest of the sultans. It is referred to also as Shahnameh Hind, Shahnameh Iran and Ferdowsi's 11th century, and now in the middle of the 14th century, Futuh Salatin of Izzuddin Isami, written in Bahmani Deccan, is an important text because it relates episodes relating to Sufism in the period of the Delhi Sultanate. The stories of miracles and other anecdotes in Sufi texts frequently relate to, and I give you what kind of miracle stories are to be found in Sufi texts. Fantastic, and many types of miracles. They relate to a Sufi sheikh flying on a camelback to Makkah for Hajj. Normally, it is said Sufis would not be going for Hajj, but they will have a desire to go for Hajj. So when they have a desire to go for Hajj, they would, they would see that miraculously there is a camel brought in front of their hospice, and they ride the camel all the way to Makkah for a ziyarat of the Holy Kaaba and come back. They could also participate in Hajj. Proper Hajj rituals. The Holy Kaaba itself coming over to India, the whole structure coming over to India for circumambulating around the blessed personality of a Sufi sheikh and his spiritually soaked hospice. So this might appear heretical from the point of view of theologies of different kinds, but people believe that it is possible that a Sufi saint has a desire for a ziyarat of the Kaaba. The Kaaba itself can come over to the presence of the Sufi. So through such examples, it would appear sometime that they were doing something heretical, and therefore there might be some fatwas, etc. on this from theology. But theology is not about culture and everything. Theology is for theologians. Also, walls floating in the air at the command of a Sufi. Wall will just rise in the air and float. Rivers getting dried up to let the Sufi sheikh cross. Sufi is traveling, and there's a river and then they realize that this river has to be crossed, so the river will dry up, and let the Sufi cross, and then river will start flowing again, also, a river of molten silver flowing underneath the prayer carpet of the saint. Soil, stone, fireboard transformed into gold. This is the claim that yogis would also be making. Alchemy, that they have the capacity to turn soil into gold. Which Sufis could also be doing, but they were not obsessed about it in terms of showing this miracle. Revival of the dead, which is an important consideration also for sainthood in other traditions. That what is the example on the basis of which someone can be referred to as becoming has become a saint, is that person has revived a dead person, and has also cured someone of some mortal diseases, and therefore these are signs of saintliness in different traditions. So, as in Sufism, also revival of the dead is a very, very interesting, important miracle. Sufis could be demanded, expected to perform in certain contexts. Also, many cases of spiritual healing, therefore, for which the people would crowd hospices and shrines, asking for ta'weez and some dua and hardcore. Many cases of and as also ability to see distant places and to foresee the good and evil in future. So one can see the future, and the details of the effects of Jalal, and this is an important component of the personality of the Sufi. Jalal and Jamal, the wrathful aspect of the saint's personality. Jalal, that it can kill you if that wrathful self is provoked, by the opponents, and Jamal, which includes grace and favor on those who had faith in the personality, and charisma of the Sufis. So these anecdotes, with all their spectacular and paranormal contents, can be identified as pertaining to the domain of prediction and divination, encounters with opponents and competitive nature of popular spirituality, conversion of the opponent and others as disciples with or without a direct and immediate acceptance of Islam. Sometimes, an opponent has come and saw the miracle by the Sufis, falls at the feet of the Sufis, and becomes a disciple, and also sometimes convert to Islam. But often the Sufis, they're not demanding conversion. Conversion would perhaps happen. Once someone has become a disciple, has already been converted. Formal conversion to Islam is not necessarily always required. This would mean that often people become disciple and continue with their older practices from whatever religious background they might have come from. And also, Sufi miracles as benevolence, benevolence for doing something good for people in distress, and as I said, healing practices, divine touch, as it were, So many of the miracle stories are recurring, they are repetitive and common to diverse traditions. As said, yogis would also be narrating some stories. Some stories could also be found in other saintly traditions, all traditions, maybe Christianity, maybe even similarities with Buddhism is to be found between Sufism and Buddhism, and therefore you will find commonalities. And therefore their historicity and truthfulness as historical facts and evidence will be difficult to establish, except that this is a text which is available to us from the middle of the 14th century, and it is a collection of what Nizamuddin Auliya himself is saying, or Nasiruddin Chiragh Daily himself is saying about narrating stories of miracles or some hikayat, anecdotes, etc., stories. So therefore, the fact that these are historical texts in the sense that they exist, there in the 14th century, we know these are historical. It's not that someone has suddenly started claiming in the 19th century that this is an important text relating to Nizamuddin Aulia, and therefore we can understand and know Nizamuddin Aulia and his tradition through this text now, after a gap of 700 years or 800 years. This is a living text, at the Nizamuddin Dargah, at the annual Urs celebration, this text is read out as part of the larger program schedules they have. It's called Fawaidul Fuad Khani. Reading Fawaidul Fuad, and it is a meritorious act because it also has teachings, moral teachings, which is it is expected that the followers and practitioners will imbibe then with reference to connections made with Nizamuddin Aulia and following his practices. So it is easy to see from the text in which they have been included the relevance, popularity, and context in which such stories emerged and spread. Many of these stories were narrated by, as I said, none other than Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia of Delhi here in his own lifetime, because the book itself has been collected, in consultation with him, and many others were recounted by his disciple and successors in the Chishti Silsila, especially Khaja Nasiruddin Chiragh Delhi in this text called, Khairul Majalis. These stories, therefore, cannot be dismissed as unimportant for understanding the relevance of Sufism and its popular appeal. Supernatural feats are indeed the Sufi saints' sources of authority in the public domain. People go to Sufis because they expect they will do some miracle for them, some favor for them. They go to Nizamuddin Dargah or Ajmer or wherever they go seeking some miraculous help, to deliver some goods for them. It is for those miraculous interventions only that a large majority of visitors continue to throng Sufi dargahs and mazars even in modern times, including times when there is so much difficulty in community relations involving Muslims and others. Many followers, many visitors to Sufi shrines are actually non-Muslims. Majority visitors to shrines are still non-Muslims, for they understand the distinction between the spiritual language of love of Sufis for God and the violent nature of politics in our time. So this distinction is very, very clear. So there is no monolithic one Islamic culture creating difficulties everywhere. There are various strands of people, communities, all claiming to be Muslims, all claiming to be good Muslims, sometimes issuing fatwas against one another and practicing Islam sincerely according to their own understanding of their, diverse traditions in different locations, temporally as also, geographically. And therefore, so many people visit Nizamuddin Dargah every day. We know if you would be interested in knowing where the Tughlaq Sultan was buried, it is a rhetorical statement that Muhammad Tughlaq might be such a tyrant, and or Alauddin Khilji would have been, all kinds of, perhaps violence, political violence, even genocide, massacres could have been possible under the Tughlaq Sultan or the Khaljis, etc. But now no one is bothered where they are buried, but they go to Nizamuddin Dargah for whatever connections spiritually, they would like to make. In their own lifetime, the emergence of Sufi saints from the seclusion of their hospices, khanqahs and jamaat khanas, to consciously announce their claims to authority in the society or being treated by people as authoritative figures was contested by many opponents coming from different backgrounds. They could be ulama, they could be sultans, they could be Sufis of diverse orders. So they included Sufis of rival orders, custodians of Sunni Islam, the ulama, singular alim, scholar, the ulama being the theologians, the reigning Muslim sultans and leaders of non-Muslim traditions such as yogis, sannyasis, and Brahmins would also be interacting with Sufis. As also questioning their credentials and claims to superiority spiritually. So rival claims to authority were settled through often miraculous combats with the opponents. Sufi literature celebrates victories of the saints in such encounters. These involved sitting in a fire chamber without being burned, walking on a flooded river, flying in the air, riding a tiger or a bull, transformation of the contestants into birds, and other forms of levitatory combats. To one or two examples, I will of these accounts I will give to you subsequently. Notwithstanding the principle of tolerance and forgiveness in Sufi tariqat across silsilas, the Sufi saint is often found retaliating against his opponent and performing miracles to subdue him. In some cases, as said, Jalal often. In some cases, opponents die a sudden and painful death on account of the curse of the saint. Alternatively, they realize their mistakes and lesser spiritual stature or capabilities, seek forgiveness, become disciples, and get reformed. This is the trajectory of Sufis winning converts to their practice. Anecdotes reveal that the arrival of a Sufi in a non-Muslim locality was perceived as an encroachment in the territorial authority of the local miracle worker or spiritual power holder. Reminding here of the stories of the kind narrated with regard to Khaja Muinuddin Chishti's encounter with a famous local yogi in Ajmer. There are many interesting stories, but those stories are in circulation from the 16th century. There are some very interesting texts from the 16th century which talk about early encounters of Sufis. In this case, Muinuddin Chishti with a yogi called Jaipal, who was deployed by Prithviraj Chauhan for taking care of the charisma of Muinuddin Chishti. And leads to a very interesting proposition in the sense that Muinuddin's superior spiritual powers and authority is confirmed at his side, and we know for 800 years now the Ajmer Dargah remains very important. Sufi literature gives due recognition to the miraculous ability of the yogis also. It's not that it's completely dismissed, but the Sufi Sheikh's victory in the combat against his opponent proves his superiority. So then miracles themselves are hierarchized in terms of the power, and therefore it is believed in Sufi circle also that the yogis could also perform miracles, but they were treated as inferior, a lesser miraculous power holder. Hierarchy being mu'ajizat, the prophetic miracles, karamat, Sufis marvels, istidraj, the power to perform some tricks, magics, etc., miracles, etc., by yogis, and maunat will be something of a dark kind of magic performed by some tricksters. So these are the four categories of miracles that have been identified by Nizamuddin Aulia in his discourses and discussions with the disciples. Once the spiritual superiority of the Sufi is established through such mechanism, through better knowledge of Sharia, better knowledge of Islamic tradition, better ability to perform miracles, etc., those who challenged him convert to Islam. And some also run away from it because saying that, look, we have a family, we have a society, what face we are going to show, that we recognize that you are a big person, but let me go back to my tradition. So over time, the yogi, when someone who converts, in this case, if a yogi converts, he becomes a wali, a friend of God, and the ruler, a pious Muslim Badshah or Sultan, king. The conversion of the yogi and ruler is followed by mass conversion of the local population in the area. In some cases, as narrated in Sufi texts, the defeated non-Muslim opponents peacefully withdraw to save themselves, not becoming a disciple, not converting to Islam. They just want to avoid recognizing the power, but maintaining distance. Alternatively, the opposition leads to their violent end as in the case of the stories of conflict between Moinuddin Chishti and Prithviraj Chauhan, to which I indicated previously. It is believed that the Chauhan ruler was defeated by the Turks in the Second Battle of Tarain, 1192, which eventually led to the establishment of the Delhi Sultanate early in the 13th century because of the curse of Khaja Gharib Nawaz. Because previous year Shahabuddin Ghori, was defeated by Prithviraj Chauhan at the same place in 1191. But the next year it is because of curse of Moinuddin Chishti. This is what Sufi tradition claims. Prithviraj Chauhan, it is said that Prithviraj Chauhan's refusal to accept the spiritual power and authority of the saint Moinuddin proved fatal for him. Even the Jogi could not save him, and Moinuddin Chishti was later quoted as saying in Siyarul Awliya, the text that I mentioned by Amir Khord Kirmani, middle of the 14th century. So 120 years after Moinuddin Chishti's death, he has said that पिथौरा रा जिंदा गिरफ्तीम, पिथौरा को जिंदा पकड़ा है, पिथौरा रा जिंदा गिरफ्तीम व दादीम व लश्कर इस्लाम. उसको जिंदा पकड़ के मैंने लश्कर इस्लाम के हवाले कर दिया है. We have caught Prithviraj alive and handed him over to the army of Islam. Further, the Sheikh's concept of vilayat or spiritual territory, which was controlled through religious and political categories of authority also, was the source of conflict between Sufis and Sultans of Delhi. Delhi is the seat of the capital of the Sultan, and Delhi is also the spiritual territory of the Chishtis. So whose writ will run large in Delhi's public life. And this would create difficulties in the relations between the Sultan and the Sufi. And there has to be a separation here very, very clearly that the political authority is in the hands of the Sultan and his nobles and administrators, and the religious life, and spiritual, personal, religious life is controlled by, dominated by a Sufi. If the separation is made, there will be no difficulty, and this is what Nizamuddin Auliya tried with Alauddin Khalji successfully eventually. That though Alauddin Khalji was continuously threatening that he will come over and meet Nizamuddin Auliya, and Nizamuddin Auliya was insistent that he will not meet him because these are two different domains altogether of politics and power and sovereignty, of the vilayat on one hand, governance, and the spiritual, matters relating to heart and God. The spiritual domain, religious domain, is the domain of the Sufis and the ulama, perhaps, and therefore no point meeting the ruler. So this was amicably resolved, but in the conflict that would follow, sometimes the Sultan used the support of the ulama to say that these Sufis were not properly following Islam, and therefore these people need to be chastised, as in Nizamuddin Auliya's case, being forced to come to Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq's court to justify, legitimize, explain, from the point of view of the Shariat of Sunni Hanafi Islam, the practice of qawwali and music, and the sama is referred to as mahfil sama, which also sometimes includes music and dance, which would also include sometimes women. So questions were being raised that how these are practices which are not not recommended in Islam, and yet these people are practicing, so which Nizamuddin Auliya was able to defend. So among the weapons that the Sufi master used in the event of an encounter was his miraculous ability to cause the death of the opponent. And the stories of conflict between Sheikh Nizamuddin and Delhi Sultans reveal two of them were eliminated from the scene one by one, ostensibly due to his curse, as believed in the Chishti tradition. Qutbuddin Mubarak Shah Khalji and Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, both of them were very aggressively opposing, and creating difficulties for Nizamuddin Auliya, were done away with. We don't see criminal conspiracy into it, but in religious tradition of the Sufis would claim they were removed because of the curse of the saint. The Sheikh Jalal Roth reportedly affected even the general population, as the episode led to terrible famine and epidemic in the Sultanate capital of Delhi. Indeed, the destruction caused by Muhammad bin Tughlaq has been attributed to the curse of Nizamuddin Aulia. These anecdotes of conflict as well as collaboration, such as king-making, bestowal of kingship, or prayer in absentia for the survival of Sultanate, etc., testify to the Sufi sheikh's interest and involvement in political matters, and yet maintaining distance from the pettiness and violence embedded in politics. That Sufis are not doing politics here. They are Allah. They are men of God. The other set of stories relate to encounters with somewhat heretical mystic Qalandars, deviants. The Chishti Sufis of Delhi Sultanate were sympathetic towards these wandering Muslim mystics. From historian of Central Asia, Turkey, Ahmad Kara Mustafa has characterized as God's unruly friends. God's unruly friends in a book with the same title. These are also claiming that they are friends of God, but they are so very unruly that they do not conform to any law, and therefore they become a source of difficulty. They do all kinds of things which is completely unlawful from both in terms of religious and the political. So how do we deal with these Qalandars? The abuses and occasional violence of the Qalandars and other related groups were considered a kafara or recompense by the Chishti Sufis as a sort of compensation for the blind faith of the disciples and widespread devotion of followers, to which I will come back again, that because so many followers are coming, prostrating, kissing hand, etc., and yet sometimes there will be some Qalandars and other people, opponents would also come and do some mischief, and that will balance both the veneration as also opposition. So by contrast, unlike the Chishtis in terms of their attitude towards Qalandars, the Sohrawardi Sufis of the Sultanate period, same period, 13th, 14th century, Bahauddin Zakaria is a big name, several others, they disliked the flaunting of the standard norms of conduct in Muslim societies by the Qalandars. There are certain norms of proper conduct based on Quranic traditions of the Prophet, practices of the early generations of Muslims, and backed by Sharia, different interpretations of Islam, and therefore need for conformity sometimes with deviance and departure, but yet broader frame of being Muslims should remain and therefore should be respected. So one of the anecdotes reveal that despite the skepticism of the Sohrawardis and even Chishtis about the deviant nature of the practices of the Qalandars, it was possible that outright rejection of their mystical experiences, practices, and claims, etc., was not justified, because a true lover of God can be found amongst them as well. That there might be a Sufi-like person among the Qalandars also, and therefore no fatwabazi unless someone is gone with whatever memory and and examples of conduct that person has left behind accordingly should be remembered or not. The anecdotes on the arrival of Jogis and Brahmins to the Sufis' hospice, Khanqa or Jamaat Khana, further established the superiority of the Sufis in that context. Those who came to test the miraculous ability of the Sufis were dazed by his jalal. Sometimes a levitatory contest was also held in which the Jogis are shown to have been defeated. I will give one example of this, interesting example of this further down. The narratives end with the Jogi either embracing Islam or taking to his heels, run away. Similarly, the stories of encounters with a Sufi sheikh of a different silsila, say Chishti versus Sohrawardi, portray an intense competition for power and prestige within Sufi fraternities. A possible conflict was avoided by adhering to mutual respect, regard for legitimacy, and recognition of each other's territorial authority. So there will be peaceful, arrangement of things in such a way that someone is important here in Delhi, another Sufi at the same time could be equally important in Lahore or Bengal or Deccan and territories, amicably marked as areas of spiritual influence of particular Sufis. The anecdotes relating to Sufis' miracles as a source of benevolence throw further light on an equally fascinating aspect of his personality, contributing to his popularity and establishing his claims to authority, which is what actually makes Sufi traditions vibrant. Medieval Sufi traditions, in terms of their sacredness, continuing in the present over 1,000 years now in different locations. Is because of this, Sufi miracles as a source of benevolence, and that makes Sufis popular. Sufis were approached for curing various kinds of illness, as I said previously, recovery from body ache, and even revival of the dead with the help of charms, amulets, taweez, and often through blowing and touching. Their intercession was sought for preventing natural calamities and relief from drought, famine, and epidemics. They were also asked to pray for protection from enemies such as the Mongols in the 13th century, early 14th century, Mongol invaders and dacoits and robbers in different places as on highways. Pilgrims and merchants invoke their blessings and benediction for ensuring safe journey. The story is not only about water saint Khaja Khizr saving shipwrecked people, but also Nizamuddin Aulia arriving to rescue travelers in distress in different areas, on sea, in desert, in rivers, etc. This motive of saintly persons arriving to rescue passengers being drowned and travelers being drowned in sea is to be found in other traditions also almost simultaneously in circulation. The Sufi narratives show that people of various towns and cities wanted Sufis to stay in their neighborhood and protect them in times of crisis. The departure of a Sufi from a particular area was considered to be a bad omen, the forerunner of a bolt from blue. Nizamuddin Aulia, for instance, believed that the region of Punjab was protected from Mongol onslaught because of the blessings of the presence of a Sufi of the stature of his own master, Sheikh Fariduddin Ganj Shakkar, Baba Farid of the Sikh tradition. In the year when Baba Farid departed from this world in 1260s, the Mongol hordes invaded and devastated the region. Later, Izzuddin Isami, whose text I mentioned previously, Futuh Salatin, wrote that Delhi was destroyed by Muhammad Tughlaq because God had removed Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia from there. 1325, Muhammad Tughlaq takes over, with a brutal death of Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, and the same within months, Nizamuddin Aulia also dies. And then Muhammad Tughlaq takes over to do all kinds of things in terms of creating such a bad name for himself, in the sense that if there is a political hierarchy in the present, people say this is a Tughlaqi Farman. And therefore, the tradition would say that all this madness was eventually related to Nizamuddin Aulia's departure from this world to thereafter. Though it is also believed that Nizamuddin Aulia might still be lying there at the Dargah and taking care of the world around him, and that's how the spirituality is and sacredness of that space is continuously emphasized. According to Isami, the rulers were heads of states for matters political, but it were the mystic faqirs who averted the calamities. If there were no saints on the face of the earth, the world would not have continued to exist. The world functions by the blessings of the saints. Popularity of a Sufi saint depended upon how successfully he demonstrated his miraculous power. The people appropriated a miracle-working Sufi sheikh, expected him to stay in their neighborhood and perform miracles for them. Now, this is a role of Sufis. This is a role the Sufis continue to perform even after they pass away. because, as I said, it is believed that saints never die. Lying in their graves, they continue to look after their disciples and followers. Visitors to their mazars and dargahs are thus blessed with the surrounding spirituality and belief in charisma. This has made shrines relevant for all times in the past and the present. Spiritually soaked Thursday evenings and the occasion of annual Urs, death anniversary of Sufis, celebrated as something of the Sufis' marriage with the beloved God, or Urs are considered to be especially rewarding. These shrines are open to everyone. They don't question man, woman, high, low, rich, poor, Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Christian, transgender, this person, that person. All are creations of God, and none are to be discriminated against. A few stories which I will be recounting in some details here bring out this and several other significant dimensions which together make Sufism a vibrant spiritual movement within Islam with a history going back, as I said, 12 centuries and counting. It was part of the great tradition of Islam at its zenith, second, third century, fourth century of Islam, and now it is also witness to the contemporary history of Islam at its lowest ebb, assuming that we are reaching a nadir of sorts in terms of political situation, vitiating things everywhere. In either case, its relevance is a matter of hope and solace for those who seek to live in a world promising peace and harmonious coexistence of all the beautiful creations of God. For it creates a spiritually imbued brotherhood of unity in diversity, a fraternity, as I said, of Ahle Dil, soaked in love for God and everything around us. As Nizamuddin Aulia said, dervishes were seen to be so graceful in arguing for their case in a fight that looking at them, people wondered how elegant they might be in expressing their love for each other. So when they're fighting, they are so graceful. So imagine how they would be talking when they were talking lovingly. And therefore, it's in order now that I move to narrate as samples, 2 or 3 of them, time permitting, from the Sufi literature, especially Fawaid al-Fuad, Nizamuddin Aulia's discourses, his narrations, which further establish the value of Sufi anecdotes, hikayat, including tales of miracles. So let me quickly present 2 or 3 of these. And these are very interesting. One is on the character of the people we have to live with and gracefully endure pain inflicted by them. Amidst all the different kinds of difficulties one has to face with. And therefore, Sufis would be identifying people, identifying times when people begin to change from one era to another. And therefore, this example I give as an understanding of, the Sufi understanding of what they thought about the world around them and how this has to be endured. So Nizamuddin Aulia told his audience, recorded by Amir Hassan Sizzi, that the Prophet Prophet Muhammad had mentioned about 5 generations, tabaqat or tabqa of people after him, and each of the generations would last for 40 years. So he has mentioned for 200 years, 5 generations of 40 years would be like this. The first generation is that of the Sahaba or his companions, and they were the best of the people in the Islamic societies, known for their spiritual knowledge and experience, ilm and mushahida, the knowledge of God. The second generation comprised tabi'een, the companions of the Prophet, and they were marked by, identified with their good deeds and piety, bir and taqwa, good deeds and piety. And taqwa is important, and that is what Sufis are about, thinking about. Clear, cultivate your heart and keep yourself clean in terms of the lower self, So therefore, tazkiyah nafs and purification of the qalb. So, and the third generation consisted the people who were Sufi-like, who would let the good things of the world go to people who desire to have them, because Sufis do not desire the world; they desire God. And they want to run away from them, and even if there is no one around who is demanding the wealth a Sufi might have, they share and spend everything for the love of God in Rahe Haq, on the path of God. So the first is of let people have, such people who desire the world, let people have, that is tawasul, and sharing with the world whatever one has is tarahum, tawasul and tarahum. And the fourth generation includes people, and people zamana kharab ho raha hai, people are becoming completely uncontrollable in terms of the political or following some norms of conduct, etc. And violence, will be beginning to affect the society. So fourth generation includes people who resort to aggression and animosity, khusumat, to misappropriate everything, which they see, and therefore they are identified with the characteristic called takato, that they can misappropriate everything, and no relation is important for them, no relation except their greed, and therefore takato is the term identified. Pata talluq is from there, and it is because of the greed. And analogous to it is the conduct of the people who surreptitiously hoard wealth, not sharing with others, showing their back on the people, as it were. Tadabo. So tapato and tadabo, this is the fourth generation. People are now showing their lust and greed all around, and nothing else is important for them except their own, misappropriation of anything that they can wanting to lay their hands on. The fifth generation, and fifth generation is very, very disturbing. The last part of the 40 years after the death of the Prophet. Fifth generation would constitute people of Harj and Marj. Harj or Marj, they will kill each other to feed their self-interest. The previous one was just surreptitiously, hoarding things and monopolizing things to their advantage, etc. But this one is going to kill you to feed their self-interest. Literally, Nizamuddin would mention in Persian, gosht, your flesh and post, skin. Gosht to poste yak digar ustan, vadar kushtane yak digar shavan. They are ready to, kill each other so brutally that they would just tear them apart, flesh and skin, so very brutally. In the sense कि आपस में एक दूसरे के गोश्त पोस्ट को नोचेंगे और एक दूसरे का कत्ल करेंगे. ये पांचवा जमाना है. गोश्त पोस्ते यक दिगर उस्तम, दर कुश्तने यक दिगर शगन. मारने मरने पे उतारू है. Thus, these are people of 5 generations of 40 years each, and thus together from 2 centuries after the Prophet. Now, Hazrat Nizamuddin has added that after these 200 years, situation would have deteriorated so much that the birth of a pup would be better than the birth of a human being subsequently. उस ज़माने में, उसके बाद का ज़माना ऐसा ख़राब हो गया है कि इंसान के बच्चे के पैदा होने से बेहतर है कि कुत्ते का बच्चा पैदा हुआ हो. This level of deterioration in the understanding of Sufism with reference to the Prophet's observations is made. अगर किसी सगे बच्चा डिजायर, अगर किसी डॉग ने बच्चा पैदा किया है, बेहतर है. ना फर्जंदे आदम की औलाद नहीं. अगर किसी सगे बच्चा डिजायर दे, न फर्जंदे आदमी के बच्चे से कुत्ते का बच्चा पैदा होना बेहतर होगा. After the 5th generation, the Sufi master concluded that the 2 centuries of the Prophet are long gone, 600 years then. Imagine the situation today, early 14th century. With tears in his eyes, he remarked, "इंसात खुद मर्दुम चे गोयर." आज के ज़माने में आदमी क्या कहे? Look at the people and how they are behaving, and we cannot even criticize them. That we have to just protect ourselves. And how do we do this? By withdrawing ourselves and seeking protection of God, to whom we want to eventually go back in the Sufi understanding of things. And because competitiveness is so much around, and I was mentioning about the cases of interactions and encounters between Sufis and yogis, one interesting story that I will be narrating is from Uch in Sindh, of a Sufi from Iran, Ghazun, Sheikh Safiuddin Ghazuni, who comes to his hospice in Uch and challenges him. What is the challenge? Challenges him to of a levitatory contest, that we will rise in the air and get stationed somewhere in the air and then come back and sit on the ground, defying the law of gravity. So this is this quickly I will remind. This is a very interesting story that is narrated by Nizamuddin Auliya and compiled early in his Fawaid al-Fuwad. Sufis believed mystics could fly, as I said previously, and they needed to display this paranormal ability when provoked to do so. Sufis have to hide their miracles, but when provoked to do so, they should be performing miracles. Nizamuddin has narrated an account of a challenge faced by Sheikh Safiuddin Ghazuni from a yogi at Uch. And it is Waqt yogi dar Uch Rasid bar tariq dawa kiya بخدمت Sheikh Safiuddin Ghazuni dar Ahmad dar Bahashu. He came and challenged and began to debate and question and said, we will have to enter into a combat. And the yogi said, "Come, we will fly in the air. Baya qadam be numayan." हम जमीन से पैर को उठाते हैं. Baya qadam be numayan. The Sheikh told the yogi that since he was the one who was making such claims, he should perform the feat. Sufi is not claiming that he is performing a miracle. Sheikh ne kaha, "Davi tu mi kuni." You are making such claims. Tu qadam be nama. You rise in the air, and I see. So yogis are supposed to be able to perform some miracles. It's a Daraj. He elevated himself from the ground, defying the law of gravity, and remained suspended so high in the air that his head touched the roof. Thereafter, the yogi descended straight on the floor and challenged the Sheikh to repeat the miracle. That he was able to elevate in the air and went all the way to the roof of the hall where this encounter was taking place, and he comes back straight to the ground and says, "Now you do it." So yogi zameen se behawa baramad, hawa mein aa gaya. Chunan ke sare u basakhs rasid, uska sar tak chala, छत तक चला गया. बाज हम चुनान मुस्तकीम, फिर उसी तरह से सीधे फरोल आमद नीचे आ गया. शेख रा गुफ तू हम कदम बेनमा. Now you do this. So what will the Sufi do? Sufi cannot say, "Yogi, आप बहुत बड़े खिलाड़ी हैं, I follow you and become a disciple." Or Sufi will say, "हम बड़े खिलाड़ी हैं, we are a better performer of miracle, and will do something." So what will he do? Safiuddin Ghazuni will raise his head towards the sky, pray to God, and say that if you have given power to such people, you should also give some power to me to perform some miracles, to his satisfaction. So Sheikh Safiuddin Ghazuni, रुई सुई आसमान कर, उसने अपना चेहरा आसमान की तरफ किया, गुफ्त कहा, खुदा बंदा, ए खुदा, बेगाने रा इन कदम दादई, इन बेगानों को ये ताकत दिया है, मारा हम इन माने करामत को, मेरे साथ भी ये करामत कीजिए. Soon the Sheikh was seen flying in all the four directions, to west, Qibla, where Kaaba is located, from there to north, and thereafter to south, before returning to his place where he sat. So remember, Jogi had gone straight and has come back. Now this man has gone to Qibla, west, goes to north and then comes back to comes to south, and from there he comes to east. And then he comes back and lands safely at the place where he was previously sitting. So Badazan, after praying to God, Sheikh as Jai Baramad, he raised himself from that place. Janibe Qibla, Tehran Namud, he went towards the Qibla in the west, flying Tehran. As Onja Tarafe Shumal Shud, from there he went towards north, Shumal. Baz, then Tarafe Janoob Shud, he went towards Taraf Janoob, south. Baz, Bemaqami Khud, अपनी जगह पे, to his own place. Beyamado, Benashish, came and sat. Now, looking at this yogi is completely dazzled that he was able to go straight and come back, but now this man has made a whole, visits to all different four direction of the hall. So the yogi was bewildered, prostrated before the sheikh, and confessed that his power was limited to performing a straight elevation in the air and returning the same way, and that it was beyond his capacity to take right or left turns the way the Sufi has done. Marveling at the Sheikh's ability to fly in various directions, the yogi admitted that the Sheikh's practices were true and his false. Sheikhs were haq and his batil. Haq and batil. So the original text would read like this: Yogi हैरान बेमान, हैरान हो गया, सर दर कदम शेख आवर, अपने सर को शेख के कदम पे गिरा दिया. And गुफ्त कहा, said, as आने माँ हमीन कद्र बेश नीस के az ज़मीन कद्री मुस्तकीम बर आयम जानिबे बाला रवीन और हम चुनान फरोद आयम. We have only this capacity that we can go straight, above and come back exactly in the same manner. Amma, you, Shuma, इनके हर जानिब, हर दिशा में, हर तरफ, डायरेक्शन के खास्ती चाह मैल कर दी, आप घूमे. इन हक अस, यही हक है, वह इलाही है, यही डिवाइन है, वह अस ऑन मा बातिल अस. What we have done is haq, what we do is batil. And now, in our Qawwali traditions, at different dargahs and different performance, the Qawwal will proclaim this: Subhanallah, Subhanallah, Walhamdulillah, Al-Haqqo, Al-Haqqo, Ya Hayyo, Ya Qayyum, Subhanallah, Subhanallah. And then he will evoke, the charisma of this, of the achievements of the Sufis for 1200 years in the country of Hindustan or Bengal or Deccan or wherever Sufis had traveled. Through such encounters, as also in a very, very graceful manner in such manners such as receiving a follower respectfully, offering hand to kiss or taking hand to kiss. And with this last episode, I will be stopping because I'll be also taking some questions. The last discussion that I will be referring to is on kissing the hand of a Sufi and seeking blessings. Sometimes also prostrating, which becomes a very controversial, practice from the point of view of theology, that we can only submit and prostrate before God, but these are not God, and people go and submit and prostrate, etc., which is shirk and even kufr. But on kissing the hand of a Sufi, there is a very, very interesting discussion that has taken place at Nizamuddin Aulia's hospice, and this I would quickly present. That there was a discussion on how people kiss the hands of dervishes in anticipation of receiving blessings, because they think these dervishes, Sufis, are divine beings. They are near to God. Some godliness, some divinity is also part of them, and therefore they kiss hands and seek blessings. Khalq दस्ते दरवेशान नी बोसन, पब्लिक दरवेश के हाथ चूमती है, and बरकत नी तलबन, बरकत भी तलब करती है, बरकत भी मांगती है, blessings, seek blessings, etc. Now, this is the public side. What the Sufis themselves are thinking is explained in a very, very interesting manner, offering the Sufi perspective on this practice of offering hand for kissing by the follower. Nizamuddin offered the perspective from the other side, in which dervishes, Sufis and dervishes who offer their hands for kissing, wish and pray that they get the hands of a blessed person to hold. You know? It is possible that of all the 1,000 people and others who are coming and kissing hands, it is possible that some of these people might be Ahle Jannat, Ahle Akhirat. They might have already been accepted by God to be sent to heaven. ये मगफूरी लोग होंगे, इनकी मगफरत हो चुकी है. And therefore the Sufi would say that मशाइखो दरवेशान के दस्त बोसीदन मीदहन, मशाइख दरवेश के दस्त बोसीदन मीदहन, जो अपने हाथ देते हैं किस करने के लिए. नीयत ईशान, उनकी नीयत क्या है. इन हम ये है कि मी बाशर के मगर दस्ते मगफूरी बेदस्ते ईशान रसद, किसी मगफरत शुदा आदमी की, इंसान की, ह्यूमन बीइंग की का हाथ उनके हाथ में आ गया है, and therefore this is a blessing, and therefore it is not a one-way traffic from Sufi to the public. It is possible, as in the Qalandar case, that it is possible among Qalandars also there might be something whose face might be lightning with the spirit of God, and therefore he is a Sufi, and therefore not all Qalandars could be condemned. Similarly, not all followers who are coming should be frisked and checked for security, etc. And we know that security would sometimes be a problem. It is possible that some murderers might sneak into the crowd of a Sufi, assembly and create some violence. But Sufis would say that it is possible that some other men of God, divine beings and people who have already achieved salvation are also part of the crowd, and therefore we have to respect that crowd. So Sufis also had realized that since so many people would kiss their hands and prostrate before them, it is possible that some antagonists, opponents, would also throw stones at them. Some come to prostrate, some throw stones. Perhaps as part of a divine strategy to keep them grounded and in balance, God himself has sent an opponent to throw a stone so that the Sufi should realize that Sufi is a human being, Sufi is not God, and therefore should remain grounded on earth, and there should be some balance, nizam, balance in the Sufis. वो सूफी हवा में उड़ने लगेगा तो खत्म हो जाएगा. Sufi has to remain grounded and say tawbah, astaghfirullah, 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 because you don't know whether God has accepted or not, and what is going to happen tomorrow further on the day of judgment. And there is a long period of also barzakh, the waiting period between this world and the Qiyamah. So Sufis would take it gracefully with Jamal, as I said, and then there is this Jalal also. But if the nature of a position is devious and demonic or satanic, it needed to be suppressed with a heavy and wrathful hand, Jalal. And Sufis could, it was believed, break the neck of the detractors. किसी की गर्दन तोड़ सकते थे. If someone is having an evil eye on someone, and Sufis would just turn that person's neck in the other direction to just prevent that person from having an evil eye on the disciple. उसकी just कमर गर्दन तोड़ सकते हैं. And they could also curse them in such a way that they would die and be dispatched to hell. So what will people do who believe? The people who believe maybe blindly or in a manner that is studied. Most people have historically thought of being on the right side of Sufis, as it were, seeking blessings and benediction, and soaking themselves in the language of love and belonging of the spiritual kind as a matter of heart. And this cultivation of the heart, and the heart itself, in terms of Sufi practice, is central, and therefore I will say that I will be stopping these stories, hikayat, etc. And with this emphasis that it is important that historians should read these and assimilate these beliefs of Sufis and their followers to be able to understand how Sufis were important in what they were saying in their own context. And there's a long legacy of it, and the belief in miracles, of Sufis. Whether it's a roadside dargah, mazar, and large tomb complex, people seek some blessings and benedictions, some miracles in their life through the agency of the Sufis, who are supposed to be near to God and therefore access God, through the Sufis. And these stories reinforce the belief of the significance of Sufi miracles in the life of the Sufis themselves, as also in the life of their followers and the larger circle, of the society in the past and the present. But the examples that I've given is from the mostly from the 13th, 14th century, especially from the 14th century narration in texts like Fawaidul Fuad, benefiting moral stories, benefiting the heart. I'm stopping now. If there are questions, I will try to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. That was a wonderful talk. Thank you very much. Now, moving on to the questions.
Yes.
Okay, so I see a question. Okay. Sukhdev Sohal has asked, did the contemporary rulers ask or compel the Sufis to perform miracles or face wrath? Were miracles of the Sufis in conformity with contemporary Islam?
Contemporary Islam here perhaps is meant if we are talking about Sufis of the Delhi Sultanate period, the Delhi Sultans and the 13th and 14th century, and the Sufis. So the example that, for instance, I was giving of Nizamuddin Aulia's encounter with Qutbuddin Mubarak Shah Khalji and Ghasuddin Tughlaq, I mentioned how both of them were eliminated brutally, not directly by Nizamuddin Aulia and his followers, but in Ghasuddin Tughlaq's case, yes, because before Ghasuddin Tughlaq is killed, in the morning before that, Muhammad Tughlaq, then as a prince, had come to meet Nizamuddin Aulia, and with him also was this person who goes on to become his prime minister, a Telugu convert to Islam. Both were disciples of Nizamuddin Aulia. And the next morning, comes this report that how, Ghasuddin Tughlaq has died and Muhammad Tughlaq has taken over. Ghasuddin Tughlaq was returning from a campaign in Bengal to Delhi, and he sends a message to Nizamuddin Aulia saying that you have done enough Sufiyat here and spirituality and Chishti, you should leave this place before I come. And that famous statement, reply of Nizamuddin Aulia is known to everyone. Hanuz Dilli Durast, Delhi is yet far away. And to the extent that he could not even cross the Jamuna, Ghasuddin Tughlaq, and is killed before that. This is in 1325, and this is already written in 1415. Less than, in just 90 years of this episode, in a text called Tarikh-e Mubarak Shahi, of Yahya Sarhindi, of this Sayyid period. So this Hunuz Dilli Duras as a rhetoric on the part of the Sufi, confronting a sultan is already there from his lifetime and recorded in a text within 90 years of his of this event and being written here in Delhi. So there are many such episodes. In the case of Qutbuddin Mubarak Shah Khalji, what was the problem? Qutbuddin Mubarak Shah Khalji has built a mosque inside the fort complex and wanted Nizamuddin Aulia to come and pray namaz at the Sultan's mosque. Nizamuddin Aulia would say that I will rather perform namaz in the mosque nearby where he is located in Ghayaspur, not very far from Nizamuddin now. And there's a mosque nearby. He goes there very regularly. Why should he go to Sultan's mosque? And then he insisted that no, at least first of the month of the lunar calendar, the Nizamuddin must come to attend a program at his court. So which was also resisted by Nizamuddin Aulia, and it is very interesting. The story is very interesting that the Sultan was threatening that if Nizamuddin Aulia would not come to attend a program on the first morning, on the first day of the sighting of the moon of the next month, he is going to be dragged here forcibly. So then Amir Khusro and others were all very scared what is going to happen, because the Sultan could be brutal and attacking a person of the stature of Nizamuddin Aulia, who is already a living legend at that time. He has seen Alauddin Khalji, and remember, Alauddin Khalji was threatening that he will come, and he said that there are 2 doors in my Jamaat Khana and in my house. If the Sultan enters from one, I will vacate it from the other one. And then he says that you do your politics and governance, I am doing my Allahu here. So Qutbuddin Mubarak Shah Khalji was threatening. So Amir Khusro and others asked him whether he will go away to Punjab to the shrine of Baba Farid, his Peer, and invoke his support, or what will he do? So Nizamuddin Aulia said that it is not such a big matter for him, that he should travel all the way to Punjab to submit this matter of the Sultan harassing him, and therefore he is not going to go there either. But what he does, Nizamuddin Aulia goes to the shrine, mazar of his own mother in South Delhi, further down, on the road to Qutub Minar at Abshini, my Bibi ka dargah subsequently, on Arvindo Mahal, close to IIT Delhi. He goes there and prays. And what does he say there? He says that this Sultan is creating difficulties for me. If by the first of the month his matter is not settled, then I'm not going to live in this world ever again, because he's going to kill. Then he comes back, and then he just relaxes, and he sees in a dream that a raw bull has come to attack Nizamuddin Aulia. And then Nizamuddin Aulia holds the bull by the horn and just bangs it on the floor, and the bull dies that very moment. After seeing this dream, of a raw bull trying to attack him, and Nizamuddin, holding on to it, and just banging on the floor and killing him, satisfies him. So what happens before the first of the month? Qutbuddin Mubarak Shah Khalji has been killed by his own closest associate, one of his own closest associates, who goes on to declare himself as the next Sultan, Khusro Parvez, Nasiruddin Khusro Parvez, and his men. And he was not a Muslim, he was a slave and brought here, but he declares himself to be a Sultan and adopts a Muslim name and title for seeking legitimacy. And it is also doubted whether they were into homosexual relationship, Qutbuddin Mubarak Shah Khalji and that man, who eventually, middle of the night, kills him, and throws his body, outside the palace. So now that the Sultan has been killed, Nizamuddin Aulia does not need to visit his darbar, and the matter has been settled through the intercession of the blessings that Nizamuddin Aulia invoked from the powers of his mother, who lay buried, there, on the road to Mehrauli. So there are many such cases, recorded about Sufis of violent encounters, even with sultans like these, Qutbuddin Mubarak Shah Khalji, and similarly Ghasuddin Khalji had a tough time. Alauddin Khalji actually embraced Ghasuddin Khalji and got him killed, on board, on the Ganges, returning, he's there in Kadamanipur, in Allahabad, what is now Allahabad. And he says that I cannot come, because your people will kill me. So then Sultan says, okay, I will come and meet you. And this is the month of Ramzan. The Sultan is fasting. Alauddin Khalji is thoroughly irreligious, but he has captured a lot of booty and war booty from his campaign in Deccan all the way to Mabar, actually, the coast, down south. And he has come with huge Mala Ghanima, the objects of loot. And Sultan, and he is not coming to Delhi, he is holding back in Kara Manipur. And then he asks Sultan to come, and he says that I cannot meet you with all your retinue, people will kill me. Then he said, no, come, I'll meet you. They meet in the middle of the river on a boat where Alauddin Khalji embraces Ghasuddin Khalji, his own uncle, and gets him killed with a hug, basically. So now with such stories are also there, both regarding Sufis and sultans. So it depends. There are graceful aspects of Sufi activities. There are also violent encounters in which such cases have also been reported. So it depends on what moment, what kind of exigencies and things happened.
Okay, sir.
Mm.
Next question. Rakesh Dey has asked, my question is whether the Sufi saints and their stories and miracles were popular in some level among the people of other religions, or how was their relation with the people of other communities or other religious sects?
As I said, large numbers of followers of Sufis are actually non-Muslims, even today. If you want to do an anthropological study of a dargah in Calcutta, in Delhi, Ajmer, anywhere in Bengal, anywhere in Deccan, Punjab, just go there with a register, and in consultation with the keepers of the shrine that we are doing some research. What will you notice? Recording. What is the name of the person? What is the name of the father of that person? Where that person has come from? And how long that person has been coming from. You'll find that there is a long history of the association of these people with the shrine. Often, as in one of the articles, Richard Eaton has shown that the followers coming from a particular, locality, say in Pakpatan, Ajodhan, in what is now Pakistani Punjab, at Bawafari's Mazar, you find that people have come from 13th century into 14th, 15th, 16th century, non-Muslim people, different kinds of, tribal antecedents people, and eventually they go on to become Muslims. So it is possible that some people do not become Muslims, and yet, you can do this quick survey with a questionnaire at the gate of a darbar or dargah of a Sufi, or mazar or sub mazar. People in Calcutta streets, people throw coins on the mazar of a Sufi, and just stop them and ask that, are you Muslim? They'll say, no, we are not Muslim, but we have faith in this person. We have faith in Satapir, we have faith in Manikpur, we have faith in Kamal Ghazi, we have faith in Ratan Ghazi, we have faith in Mara Ali. So therefore they will throw stone and throw coins and pay obeisance and pray there and seek some mannat, blessings, benediction, etc. A large majority of anecdotal, I don't have the data, but anecdotal is a large majority of followers of Sufis at different locations historically in the Indian subcontinent are actually non-Muslims, and they do not need to become Muslims to be followers of these Sufis. And that's why you'll find that Nizamuddin Dargah or Qutub Sahib or Moinuddin Chishti's Mazar, continuously attracts people from across, different segments of the society. Bombay Film Industry people send, chadar on Fridays, Thursday evening, before the launch of their movie in the morning show next day. On the occasion of the Urs, the government of India, governments of the states of different places send chadars, ritual Sufi chadars to the mazars. My best case is that even a mad person like Donald Trump, sent chadar to Moinuddin Chishti's dargah when he was the president of India. So who were the people who were guiding him that maybe sending chadar to Moinuddin Chishti's dargah will help him in some ways, whatever his mannat or desire might have been. So In the Muslim case, there are difficulties, especially since the 18th century and the 19th, and previously also there were oppositions that reform and revival, etc., has meant that more and more Muslims are being prevented from going to dargahs of Sufis. But a large majority of Indian Muslims belong to what is referred to as Ahl Sunnat wal Jamaat. They are also, somewhat derogatory, in a manner that is derogatory, are referred to as Barelvi Muslims, named after, the surname of, Ahmad Raza Khan Barelvi of Bareli, the late 19th, early 20th century figure. So a large majority of Muslims follow Sufi-oriented Islam in India, and a large majority of actually visitors to the shrines are non-Muslims, not Muslims. Uh, uh, and if you go to the shrine on the occasion of Urs, what prayers, जैसे हिंदू, मुस्लिम, सिख, ईसाई और तमाम मजहब और तबके के लोग, उनकी सबकी नेक नेक ख्वाहिशात और उनकी नेक तमन्नाएं पूरी हों. This is what they pray, across religions. And as I said, man-woman distinction and transgender and caste, untouchability, all these things are completely defied, which means that anyone can go to the dargah. And therefore, this matter cannot be, despite examples of conversion, Islamization, etc., cannot be, brought to this usual politics of, Hindu-Muslim binary. It cannot, because the Muslimness, the content of the Muslimness is so very, diverse, that the Muslimness of the puritanical kind that is aspired with reference to the 7th century Arabia will not be here. These are not Arab people; these are Indian people, and there is syncretism and synthesis and appropriations and cultures, accretion taking place, and therefore, this is a very, very interesting experience of Islam as it is practiced in India historically. I can take maybe one or two more questions quickly, and then we can stop perhaps.
Okay, we actually have two more questions. One is from me. I just wanted to ask a little thing because you mentioned Richard Eaton. So, in his book, Sufis of Bijapur, we come across this term warrior Sufis. So, sir, when it came to peace, how differently did the Sufis of Delhi and the Sufis of Deccan perceive this notion of peace specifically?
I don't know. Richard Eaton will answer this question better, the warrior Sufi part, but certainly Sufis were part of the conquest. If Delhi Sultanate had not happened in the 13th, 14th century, Chishti Sufism might not have happened either. You know, Sufism emerged as part of the political process, as a Muslim political system. So Sufism goes to Bengal, Sufism goes to Deccan, Sufism came to Punjab, Sufism came to Hindustan. It came with the political conquest, and yet it was separate from it in terms of maintaining, on stage distance, as I said, not getting involved in jihad, the language of jihad, etc. But remember that episode I mentioned about how Sufi literature is claiming that how Moinuddin Chishti captured Pithora, Rai Pithora, Prithviraj Chauhan by his neck, Zinda Giraftin wa Dabim be Lashkar-e-Islam. So this Lashkar-e-Islam is the Turkish army. This Lashkar-e-Islam has people who are not soldiers in terms of part of a standing army, but a group of warriors who are part of the conquest. And these warriors could be claiming that they could be ghazis and they could be shaheeds, So if they are victorious, they become ghazi. If they are killed, they become shaheed. And therefore, the mazars of both the ghazis and shaheeds become, tombs and sites and become a sacred space. So depending upon which examples we are talking about, we know that revenue-free land grants would be given to Sufis in such areas which were not previously brought under cultivation, but these lands are reclaimed, and these lands are then given to Sufis, reclaimed with the help of the same people who were staying there previously, as in the Bengal case, that Richard Eaton's other book of clearing of the jungles and drying up of marshlands, and therefore the indigenous people are now being in East Bengal, now being sedentarized and peasantized, and therefore, a new, culture of accretion between these indigenous people who are not Muslims and Muslim Madhya holders, often claiming to be men of religion, holy men, Sufis also. This interaction that led over a long period from around 12th, 13th centuries, 13th centuries, all the way to 19th century, led to the making of such a large, population of Bengali Muslims. Bengali Muslims are among the largest of Muslims all over the world, and people can issue fatwas against them for whatever their practices are, but they consider themselves as the best of the Muslims in their own right. A large majority of them also claim that their ancestors in the 13th century had converted to Islam at the hands of Shah Jalal Mujarrad of Sylhet, who was the presiding Sufi even now. We know that all of them may not have converted to Islam at the hands of, in his own time, Shah Jalal to Islam, but the presence, of that shine of Shah Jalal at Sylhet is a major, site that has pulled, a large number of people into Islam, and therefore, with a long association of 3-4 centuries or more, we have evidence from 14th, 15th century of the prominence of and presence of Sufis who are attracting people. As a Moinuddin Chishti case, as I said, Ziyarat has already started. Pilgrimage to Moinuddin Chishti's shrine has already started in the 14th middle of the 14th century. So there is a long history of this association. So it will depend whether Sufis were Ghazis and Shaheed also at some time. What kind of Sufis were there? They were ordinary Sufis or big accomplished Sufis, etc. So that specificity perhaps would be continuously checked, and that is what research is asking for in terms of the exactness is what the claim we make in terms of our historical research as a scientific exercise, that there should be exactness in what claims we are making on whatever evidence we have with regard to what were the processes and events happening and who were the people involved in those processes. Richard Eaton might be able to, he's a big professor, he might be able to answer this question to you, but this is how if I say something, I will explain.
Thank you for that, sir. Thank you for answering it. Now we'll take the last question. It is from Aditya. He asks that Ziauddin Barani criticized Alauddin Khilji when he tried to pose himself as a leading religious figure to dominate over his subjects and tried to make architecture like the Alai Minar. Now, Barani praised Aulia as a true religious man, more religious than Khilji. So, do we find any other instances of praising of Sufi saints by the Orthodox theologians in Delhi Sultanate or Mughal times? Do we find some effort as that of Khilji in case of Akbar? Like where he's trying to be the leading religious figure over the Orthodox theologians or something like that.
So what Barni is saying, with regard to Nizamuddin Aulia on the one hand and Alauddin Khalji on the other. If you read Tarikh-e-Firoz Shahi, Barni is very, very sharply critical of not only political practices but also whatever claims to control of religion, etc., that Alauddin Khalji would be making. Alauddin Khalji, by his own admission, was a completely jahil person. He never studied anything. Because he was brought up as a Muslim, that he could perform namaz, etc. The fact that he killed his own uncle in the month of Ramadan, when the uncle is fasting and he is a sinner, and completely irreligious. So what religious claims to religious authority and power Alauddin Khalji could command could be nothing except his brute force, that he could command and the resources that he had. And the interesting part is that Barni's uncle, Alaul Mulk, was the lieutenant governor of Delhi under Alauddin Khalji, and his own maternal uncle and maternal and both grandfathers, maternal and the other one paternal, their grandfathers were in the service of Alauddin Khalji. But writing subsequently, because Khalji is gone in 1296, 1316, and Burni is writing in 1350s. So writing in his own time, he could certainly safely criticize Alauddin Khalji for all the violations and massive violence he was capable of doing, and those such claims that I don't know what is written in the Sharia. I will do what is good for my sultanate, not for the public of the sultanate. My sultanate, my power, that is, and therefore, the public sentiments and etc. In his opposition to for a period to Nizamuddin Aulia, Alauddin Khalji would be a loser because his own family, almost entirely, all his sons, his mother, wives, they were all disciples of Nizamuddin Aulia. But Nizamuddin Aulia would not meet him, because meeting him would mean that accepting his authority, as a and then following all the court rituals of submission to the power of the authority of the Sultan, and also accepting him in his Jamaat Khana would mean that he will have to come as an ordinary follower. And when ordinary followers come, they kiss hand, they prostrate, etc. And then Alauddin Khalji will not do this. So it will be completely, outrageous kind of, situation and violations of the norms, etc. Those certainly called all claims with regard to the ambitious project of Alai Minar, etc., was part of that, that claims of his power that he could display through these other means also, architectural projects as well. When I'm saying this, I'm not criticizing Alauddin Khalji for the fact that, in the sense that, the fact that he ruled for 20 years, large parts of the subcontinent. So he was not an ordinary figure in that sense. But when it comes to the religious domain, and making claim that he was second Alexander, Sikandar Sani, the Alexander II, and he could be a prophet, was completely nonsensical. People were laughing. His own followers were laughing that ये शराब पी करके इसका दिमाग खराब होता है. Then he says, then Alauddin Khalji says, अच्छा आज से मैं शराब नहीं पीऊंगा और कोई दूसरा भी शराब नहीं पिएगा, ठीक है, जो शराब पिएगा उसको मार देंगे. Or so sometimes power gets into the head of the people, and they do nonsensical things, which we call Tughlaqi farmans. And then Badayuni is, you see, Badayuni was not condemning Akbar. He is saying that there are people around Akbar who created such conditions that Akbar has turned against religion. In this case, traditional Sunni Islam of the Sufi-oriented kind, which was otherwise the larger practice. As I said, otherwise also, the Ahl Sunnat wal Jamaat, Sufi-oriented Islam is Indian Islam historically. And because the ulama and new Sufis and philosophers and Abul Fazl and Fazi, these Madhabi people, and then there were, Jesuit fathers and Jan Munis and different, Zoroastrians, all kinds of men of religion were trying to impress upon Akbar so that they will convert him to their religion and then use his power to convert the population. Akbar was hedging all that, and Akbar had great faith in the Chishtis. Great faith not only in Salim Chishti, but also for many years he would walk long distance barefoot in Ajmer to the ziyarat of Moinuddin Chishti's dargah. And all the arrangements today at the Moinuddin Chishti dargah is actually on the basis of a farman of arrangement of running. There are now modern bodies, but arrangements was done, by Akbar in his time, in the late in the 16th century. Humayun tomb here in Delhi, in the close proximity of Nizamuddin Aulia, is also precisely because of that connection of the sacredness of the place of the presence of Nizamuddin Dargah, and in close proximity, therefore, there will be the Mughal graveyard. It is not merely Humayun's tomb; no, it is a Mughal graveyard. So many of them would be buried there. So there are very, very clear understanding that there is a religious domain, which is a sacred, a spiritual domain, which needs to be invoked from time to time, even for the legitimation of political power, but also for the spiritual satisfaction of one's own being, because these are not secular beings. Secularism is not happening even in the 20th century. People are so much, bound by all kinds of superstitions and religious beliefs and faiths, and they are ready to kill each other on the basis of whatever they believe in. So not so much secularism, but legitimacy as also invocation for personal satisfaction, etc. Akbar never gave up on Islam. Akbar remained within Islam despite all the departures he might be making of heretical kinds. So maybe we can stop now, and
Yes, that was the end of the questions.
thank you very
Thank you,
much.
thank you, thank you from the entire team once again. And the topic was in itself very interesting, and hearing from you was absolutely wonderful. So thank you so much. And to our audience, thank you very much. Keep following our page, and our upcoming lectures include 19 শতকের বিস্মৃতপ্রায় ব্যক্তিত্ব কালীকৃষ্ণ মিত্র, যুগ ও সাধনা by Kaushik Dotto on 29 July. And again, on the 31st of this month, we have Dr. Kaushik Gangopadhyay, who will be talking on Small World of Coastal Bengal. So keep following, stay tuned. Thank you.